In today's episode of our photography review show, we're gonna look at food, landscape, macro, mixed themed, and wildlife photographers. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. I hope you had a great week, and I hope you're ready for more photography reviews. If you've never been here before, my name is Jakub, and I'm a creator and founder of Clever Photographer. For the past 7 or 8 months, I've been reviewing your photos, and I reviewed thousands of images from hundreds of photographers. It's a lots of fun, and if you would like to join us with your own images, all you need to do is to join our Clever Photographer Plus membership. You can find out more about it on our website, but really for a little fee, you get access to the photography review show, access to our Clever Photographer Academy, and also you get a monthly bundle that is focusing on photography tools. You will get hundreds of overlays, textures, presets, LUTs, brushes, and everything you can imagine for photography. So if you want to find out more about it and join us for the next episode of the Photography Review Show, head to our website cleverphotographer.com. So as you can see, we are in Lightroom CC and ready for the reviewing. We're gonna start with the food photographer, Larisa, and her image. So let's select it and let's jump straight into the camera details. Larisa, the camera Canon 600D with your favorite lens 50mm 1.8. Now looking at the camera settings, ISO 100, perfect, 50mm, f4.5 and 1/160th second. So looking at it like this, the exposure seems to be quite nice, it's well balanced. Let's zoom in, looking at the details. They are very, very nice. Obviously, it's more kind of flat scene. So even with the f-stop being on the lower side, there is not really much space for depth. So everything is nice, sharp, and in focus. I quite like that. The light is also very pleasing. There is more source of light coming from here. And there is very nice gentle shadow on this side. But I think that works quite nicely as it helps us a little bit with the overall contrast, as the cookies are a little bit more brighter. So this then create the kind of contrast towards everything else. Now, looking at it like this, as always, the scene is great. The full styling is great. Again, one thing is that the image, as it is taken from the top, it's a little bit missing the kind of scale sense. We don't really know how high are the cookies, but that's normal and there's nothing really wrong with that. It's just that's what it is. And obviously this picture would be part of maybe series of maybe 3 or 4 different images. The color contrast isn't strong, but then it's very much on a natural side, and I quite like that. And overall, technically, I think it's very, very well done. We obviously with this kind of nicely join into the composition, which I think works nicely. You know, I always like your food styling with the just kind of very smart and very clever way of combining food and the other items, which I think is brilliant. Obviously, you're always looking for the colors and texture to nicely complement the food and the style of the dish, which works really, really nicely here. The composition is clean. Even though there's kind of a lot happening, it all looks like it belongs there, which I really like. I think sometimes you can really see that the food stylist or the photographer is overdoing it, but in your case, it's nice. There's a little bit of the cutlery here as well. And in overall, yeah, it's very, very nice. So the one thing maybe just is the depth, but it is a shot from the top. The details are nice. The shadows are very cool, which helps again with the contrast itself. Storytelling is nice. It's kind of interesting shape of the image. Obviously, it's almost like a story crop. I wonder if it's on the if it's the 16 or 9, and it is. So you know, I would be quite interested to see some other crops, what was around. It's always good when you would maybe send multiple pictures, so then we can talk a little bit more about it. But in overall, I think it works very well. Now, when it comes to post-processing, the only thing I'm kind of looking at are pieces of, and I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it looks a little bit like gold or silver. And they look a little bit overexposed. Now, I don't know if overexposed is the right word, but they seem to really burn and really bright. So if I jump into the light and hold Alt or Option, and I click on whites, you can see that anything that is not black is a little bit overexposed. Now you can bring the whites down or bring down the highlights to maybe counterwork that. However, it's just something to kind of keep an eye on. Those are really bright, and when you would print this, these would be completely white. So that's just something there. I think the white balance is quite nice. I would generally go a little bit even brighter, so I would probably increase the exposure to somewhere around 10, 20, and then maybe work around more locally, maybe using a brush with a little bit of minus exposure, not crazily 30, and really just kind of adjusting the areas where I want them to be a little bit darker, so something like this. As I think the dish in overall is a little bit flat, I think the fact is that it's from the top. Second thing is that there is not a huge color contrast. And then adding to it that the light is kind of very similar across, I would maybe do a little bit of kind of dodge and burning here, create another brush, and that's where I would do some extra exposure and just paint maybe over the ones on the top, just to make it a little bit more interesting, I think. Something like this, I think, would help tremendously. So that's about it. So this is what I would do with it. Well, it's very, very nice picture. It's a lovely dishes. It's clean. It's well lit. It's well captured technically. As a part of series, I think it's very, very nice. So all in all, Larisa, it's always pleasure to see your food pictures. Thank you very much for sharing them with us. Keep an eye on the highlights in these really bright parts. And other than that, have a lots of fun, stay safe, and send us more images in the near future. Which brings us to one landscape photographer. That's a John Lister. John, 2 images. This one is epic. Wow. Let's have a look at the camera settings. Starting with this one then. Nikon Z6 with the Nikkor 24-70. From the camera setting, ISO 100, 24mm f8, 1/50th of a second. John, spot on. Perfect setting. 24mm, keeping it nice and natural. F8 perfect, making sure that you have the details all the way. You can see you have the details in the foreground as well as all the way to the background or middle ground, which is brilliant. 1/50th of a second, giving us still a little bit of texture in the sky, nice details over the fog, and nice exposure. So overall, very well done, John. Moving to this one, same camera, same lens. The camera setting, ISO 100, 24mm f10, 1/320th second. No, so the ISO again, perfect. Staying at 100 is always the way to go. 24mm good, f10 making sure that we have sharpness all the way. 1/320th second give us pretty much everything. Now this image, looking at it like this, it's more on a kind of HDR wave for me. There is a lots of really dark blue colors, then is this kind of washed out yellow, then there is lots of colors in the details here, and there is kind of lots of blue in the rocks here, so everything is kind of open and it's very busy, which I think in a storytelling about the lonely tree is a little bit of a shame, because you have this one tree which obviously is quite epic to photograph, and you would want most of the focus being on it, but there is so much happening around it with the lots of details in the sky, lots of colors, different brightness around, and of course all this open and full of colors, that I think the attention goes away. So technically, I think it's very well captured. The details are there. The light is very decent. The sky is good. However, I think when it comes to the composition, which we can move on, and the whole idea about the image, it's a little bit busy for me. So talking about composition, with a lonely tree like this, even though the sun is behind that, I would have probably, the thing is, obviously coming back to the human eyes, focusing on the brightest and whitest part of the image. The first place where the human eyes will go is this area. That's how it is. Then probably gonna get guided around, and only very much throughout the experience they will notice the tree, because there is a lot happening. So for me, framing wise, I would have tried to avoid this part completely and maybe shoot the tree with some more simpler background. Now I know that you wanted to put the sun in, but if that's the case, then we need to do some stuff in post-processing to maybe tune down the background a little bit, so the focus is really on the tree. Also, there is lots of this space here, which I don't think is necessarily needed. I think you have the mountains, but lots of just kind of empty water, which doesn't necessarily balance the composition for me. Coming and looking at this image, I really like this one. although you have the kind of high frequency foreground, which generally is considered as, it's not a mistake, but it's something landscape photographers are trying to avoid, simply because it opens a scene very busy. So there's a lot happening, the eye is getting really busy, and then it takes away the attention from the rest of the image. What I think helps to you is this kind of path, which creates very nice flow and leading line through the image. So you kind of navigate it through, and then you have the trees here, there's lots happening here, and then you have the huge mountain with lots happening here as well. Then you have the mountains at the background, so that is very good as well. You have the kind of foreground, middle ground, background, that works very well as well. The sky, yeah, there's lots happening there, but that's fine. I would maybe have cropped it a little bit differently, but in overall, I think as a composition, it's nice. If the grass would be all the way across, I don't think I would like it as much, but as you have this path here, I think that really nicely balances everything together. So John, as a composition, I think very well thought. It really creates nice leading line here. Now that brings us to the post-processing. I actually think post-processing wise, this is very well done. There is not much I would do here. I think it's nicely edited, nice dramatic outcome with lots of contrast, with the natural colors. I think, yeah, I really think it's nice. I don't know. I mean, obviously you want to keep the mountain in, so we can't do much cropping here. We could go down a little bit just to make it just to bring a little more impact, to maybe do something like this. But other than that, I'm quite happy with it. Maybe, wing it or some dodge and burn, but all in all, it's good. The only thing you can do is a little bit of brightness locally, just to help, again, navigate the eyes towards where you want them to go. So maybe the path I was talking about, you just make it a little bit brighter like this, and you can counterpart it by actually making the grass around a little bit darker. So something like this. Now looking at this image, first of all, I think there's lots of blue. This area is really super blue compared to what's happening here. So let's go back and see when we go into the color and try auto white balance, what it gives us. Now that doesn't save us at all. So we will go into our HSL, come to the saturation, and try to bring down the blue a little bit to make it a little more natural. So I think something like this is a good starting point. You want to have a blue, but maybe not that crazy. Now, then I would go in luminance, and I would actually make the blue even a little bit brighter. So something like this as well. Now, cropping wise, let's see. If we go for the panorama 16:9 and go for something like this, what is it going to do for us? It's going to look good. Let's have a look. Yeah, I think it's a little bit better, but I would probably actually put the tree on the third and create something like this. I think it's a whole new scene, but now we are really focusing on the tree and on the sun here. Then I would go into the masking again, select sky, and once it selects the sky, I would go into the clarity and minus it. And by minusing the clarity, we're making the sky a little bit more fluffier and smoother, and we're taking away the hard edges and texture and making it, we're trying to remove a little bit of attention from it. Now we can make it warmer if we want her, or colder, but I think warmer is the way to go. Maybe a little bit more pink, and leave it there. Then definitely I'm gonna do lots of masking here. Linear gradient from the bottom, minus exposure, close it from the bottom. First thing. Another one, another linear gradient, close it from the top. Oops. Something like this. We can kind of turn it around, and again, minus exposure, close it from the top. Now, more glow for the sun. Definitely something like this, minus clarity, maybe more warmth, and a little bit of extra exposure. Warmth, something like that. So we can now really do this. And what else we could do? Brush, minus exposure, and just brush over this part to take away some of that. And finally, maybe a little radial gradient over the tree, and just a little extra exposure to bring attention to it. We can duplicate it, and then bring it down as well to focus on the tree itself. Finally, I would come back, go into my effects and do the vignette. So I would get something like this. And maybe in the color and little bit minus saturation, not crazily, maybe like this, and plus vibrance. So let's have a look. Before, after, I think it's a little bit more natural. I think maybe it's with a little bit more impact, especially I think the cropping helped as well to really bring the attention towards the tree. And this is what I would do with it. So John, I hope it was helpful. I hope you don't mind that we done a little bit of editing. However, that's one direction you could have taken the picture to. And again, when you have a subject like this, when you want to bring lots of focus on it, it's really better to maybe focus on it and try to remove as much distraction as you can. John, stay safe, take care, and send us more pictures as soon as you can. Until next. John, stay safe, take care, and send us more pictures as soon as you can. Moving on, next photographer, Evgeniy. Evgeniy, we have 2 images from you. And I don't know what happened, but I love the results. I love what you're doing. I think these 2, again, are incredible captures. And I tell you what is one of the biggest difference. It's the light. I wonder if I would go back a few weeks. And I'll show you, maybe not on this one, it's not as visible. So if we go even more back, for example, this one, where there is a lot of kind of light, it's very distracting, or even further, yeah, you can see it on this one, how it's kind of lots of shadows, it's very distracting, very busy. When we come to your images now, where are we? All the way on the bottom. The result is brilliant. I really, really love it. So let's jump to it. Let's talk about them. Evgeniy, Pentax K100D Super on both images. Camera settings, ISO 200, 300mm f8, 1/500 of a second, which is looking great. Love the background. Love the focus on the plant or the flower with the lovely bee on it. I think it's looking great. I love the level of the details. It's looking great as well. This little spider here or whatever is looking brilliant as well. So all in all, excellent capture. Great colors, great light, well diffused, brilliant. And on this one, the spider is beautiful. ISO 200, 300mm f9.5, 1/350th second. Great light, great depth as well. With this plant being here, but a little bit out of focus, it's working. The spider full in focus, the flower in focus, this little bit soft is working well. I think all of it is working brilliantly. I love the light, how it's nice and diffused, so there is no distraction. The contrast of the colors is working brilliantly as well. Excellent result. Which brings me to composition. Composition and cropping. Now, okay, just so I have something to tell you, I would have wished that there would have been a little bit more space above this plant, just to kind of keep an eye on the edges. Otherwise, it's brilliant. Obviously, our main subject is clearly visible. Great contrast of the color. I think the background blur is working very well as well. The yellow and the level of details in it is great as well. The flower helps us with the depth. And all in all, brilliant. Talking about this one, again, great depth with the lovely leftover details of the plants behind. Great level of the details on the flower with the bee. Excellent contrast, excellent light, great position as well on the kind of lower third. I think that works well, and upper third for the bee. Just great, like a clear, clean images. Definitely one of the, including last week, one of the best work when it comes to macro photography from you. Really impressed by that. So, which will bring me to post-processing, and really this week, similarly to last week, I will have not much to tell you. I think it's brilliantly done. If anything, I would make both of the pictures just a little bit brighter. I think in overall, generally, you have kind of, maybe not as far, but I would have gone probably somewhere around 50 on both of them, just to make it brighter. Maybe it's your screen, that could be totally it, or it's not balanced. But I think both of the pictures deserve to be a little bit brighter and more open. Other than that, the vignettes, the editing, the colors, the white balance, nothing to add. Evgeniy, well done. Excellent job. I'm very impressed by both of the images. So thank you. Stay safe, take care, and send us more pictures for next week's episode. Which brings us to first of the three mixed photographers, John Wilson. John, it wouldn't be a week if we wouldn't do some pet or dog photography. So that's brilliant. And then this landscape capture. So let's jump to it. Let's talk about this and this. Looking at the first image, Canon 550D with your 18 to 55mm lens. From the camera settings, ISO 135mm f5.6, 1/40th of a second. 1/40th of a second for a dog. Interesting. And it looks sharp. So I wonder if maybe it's some part of like a long exposure, or there was something to it done as well, almost like an infrared edit to it. So I would be interested, how did you manage to capture him with 1/40th of a second? He must have been still. Oh, it's a statue. And on this one, ISO 140mm f22, 1/15th of a second. So I wonder if you were going for a long exposure on this one, but we'll come back to it in a second. Let's talk about this one first. So obviously camera setting is great, except the exposure, I wonder why quite slow for this type of photography, but you will know. When I zoom in, the details are there as well. So that works well. The light is quite nice, although there is a shadow, and definitely you done some kind of artistic edit to it. So I don't know if it's like an infrared or color selection or what you done to it. There's some white on the top, so I'm assuming he was wet as well. It's supposed to look maybe like a snow, but it isn't snow, so it's quite interesting. Just something a little bit different. So that's about this one. This one, now the camera setting is right, except the high f-stop. Now, I understand the high f-stop would be to slow the shutter speed. However, from my experience, anytime I go above f16, I start to reintroduce softness to the image, and I really remove the sharpness, and it brings certain artifacts. And you can really see it, especially on this part of the image. So exactly the same thing happens to me anytime I go above f16. Lots of people think that when you go as high as possible, the image is going to be as sharp as possible. That's not the case. And also, sometimes you just need an ND filter to be able to do long exposure. And if you don't have it with you, you just can't do it. So many times for me, I've been in a location where I thought, oh, if I would have the ND filter, I could have do something. But when you can, and there's nothing you can change on it. So the f22 I would stay away from unless there is a really need for that. But a 1/15th of a second is still not that slow anyway. Which brings us to kind of looking at it. The light, there is lots of kind of harsh parts. So there's this being really bright. There's a nice reflection. It's interesting colors, but the sharpness isn't that great really. Even on the stone itself, you should double check the image and maybe look at it. It looks all a little bit soft, to be honest, not just the grass there. You can look at the rock, and it looks like maybe the camera have moved a little bit. I wonder if you capture it handheld. If you did, generally we suggest to stay around 1/40th, 1/50th of a second. But yeah, technically I think that could have been done a little bit more to it. Composition wise, it's interesting composition, although there is a lot happening, but as the rules goes, you have your foreground with a lovely reflection, you have your path, so the leading line, then you have some stones at the back giving us a nice flow, a nice scale, you have the kind of mixture of colors, but it's not I'm not that crazy about it altogether, because there is just, it's difficult to say what is it exactly you're trying to show us, what is it you're focusing on. The long exposure didn't completely happen here, so that's not it. Obviously, with the little bit of softness, it's a tricky one. Which brings us to this one. On composition, it's actually really nice. I really like that. Extra space in front of the animal, looking away, which is interesting. There's the ball there, the tree behind. I think maybe this effect really helped as well with the color contrast, making us aware that the main subject is the dog. So all in all, very interesting. I wonder maybe in a comment if you could just shoot me what was the idea. It's always good to know what you are trying to create, so I understand better to it. When it comes to post-processing, you done your thing to this image already, so I'm not gonna really do anything to it because I think it's very interesting. The contrast is there, the brightness is good, I think, as well, and that's about it. On this one, because of the sharpness, there is not much we can do. Obviously, normally, I would be looking at maybe turning it to black and white, or maybe doing some other dodge and burn, really highlighting, you know, the creek or little river to just kind of bring more attention to it. as it's our main flow. Then you could create one with kind of darker and darken some other areas to keep the attention towards the flow. Then you can highlight the stones and so on. So that's what I would do. But first I would look at the image and see if you have something sharper. If you have, maybe send it over next week. I'm happy to help you with it as well. John, thank you so much for sending us your photos. Really interesting artistic project here, and something to work on for the future. You stay safe, take care, and send us more pictures in the future. Which brings us to Krita. I don't know if I've seen pictures from you before. However, we have two images, mix of different themes. This is a food photography and then lovely long exposure landscape photography. So let's start by looking at this one and talking about the camera details. So this was captured with the Apple iPhone 12. Now with the phones, you can't really judge the camera settings as much as on a camera, because it works a little bit differently there. ISO 50, 4.2 millimeters, f1.6, 100 of a second. Now looking at it like this, the light is quite nice, nicely diffused. Good idea to place it under the window with some quite decent diffusion. You have some strong highlights here. However, the shadows are quite nicely done, so that works quite well. The level of the details is nice. I mean, obviously you can see the texture, and I think the kind of food styling is very nice. I would have suggest different position compared to the wall. I would have tried different background and also maybe try different place altogether. The light is great. However, the food styling around everything on the wooden board is working for me. After that, I think I would look for a different environment. Also, out of all of this, I think maybe this mushroom is a little bit out of the space. I understand that you're trying to kind of create something else, but I think you've done plenty on the board itself, so this doesn't really have to be there for me. Looking at this one, Canon R5 24 to 105 millimeters, ISO 100, 77 millimeters, f22, 1 second. So ISO 100, spot on, trying to stay away from any additional noise, or as much as possible. There is still some noise there, which generally is either created with a high f-stop, dark scene, or also long exposure. So 1 second for this, created most likely by increasing the f-stop. I already spoke about it to John, Krita, and really, generally, the rule is to try to stick to around the maximum f16, because when you go higher than that, you start to take away some of the sharpness, and you can really see it on these rocks when you zoom in, and the trees, that once you go high with the f-stop, that crisp is kind of gone, so something to stay away from. Still, in overall, it's a lovely, lovely image. I love the long exposure. I love the contrast of the colors, so technically I think very well done. Which brings us to composition. I think composition-wise, this is a great picture. I love the flow, I love the contrast, I love the main subject, I love the long exposure, I love the kind of dark tuned colors around it. Brilliant. The only thing I would have tried to avoid is this little tree here. Other than that, it works all for me. Composition on this one, I would remove the mushroom, look for different background and this, the surface where it's on. And other than that, it's great. I love the mix of the colors. I love the choice of the ingredients. I think it works very nicely. Just keep an eye on those things. Post-processing, it's a little bit yellow for me. But let's have a look when we go into color and white balance and go for auto. Now, not that blue, but I think not that yellow neither. And maybe not that green, but a little less purple. This is something I would do. Then we could do radial gradient over the board, invert it, bring it down, and bring more attention towards the bird itself, towards the board itself. Then this image right here, actually not much I would do here, to be honest. From me, I think it works very nicely. I think the contrast of the bright and green and really dark works very nicely. It's very well done, and I would leave it. Krita, thank you so much for sharing your image or images with us. I hope you can send us more. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and again, send us images as soon as you can. Which brings us to Zdenek. Zdenek, 2 images. Well, this is a little bit different. I don't know if I have seen an image from you which would have houses in it or any structures. So that's interesting. I love the canyon. That's looking great. And then some birds. Flamingos, I assume, in a full run. So let's have a look at it. Starting with this one. Looking at the camera details. Canon 600D with the 18 to 55 millimeters lens, ISO 100, 18 millimeters, f11, 1/125th of a second. Zdenek, love the image. There's composition is brilliant. There's this like really something what really talk about all about nature and natural reserve, and above it these factories and big houses. I think that's brilliant. That has a lot of there is a lots of thinking coming into this, and I think it's very well done. Obviously the camera setting is spot on, giving you nice result with nice sharpness all the way through. The light, a little bit shame that there is this kind of dark shadow here. Other than that, I think it works. The sky is looking good as well. If you have added the clouds, they're looking brilliant. So well done for that. And technically, I think it's very well handled. Really like that. I'm really happy that you have the whole reservoir in it, that you can see all of it like this. Now on this one, we are back to our Nikon Coolpix for this one with the ISO 100, 62.5 millimeters. I know the millimeter transition there is a little bit different. f5, 1/800 of a second. 1/800 of a second. And when I zoom in, it's almost sharp. I think there is a touch. It's either the camera who gives us that kind of softness, or there is a little bit of softness with 1/800, but I still love the capture. I think it's brilliant. I think the 3 sets of birds moving forward, looking great. In the line, there's a lot happening. There is a splashing of the water. Brilliant. Really like it. Well done. Excellent framing. One thing is to take a picture of a bird, which all of us can do. Another thing to take it so it looks good with a good composition, and this is great. For the composition, that moves us into it. The only thing is I would do is to make sure that we are straight. So just kind of looking at both sides. Yeah, something like this. But then looking at it, it seems that we are straight on the top and not straight on the bottom. So let's have a look. We can use the guidelines. This one. So then we get something like this. And we can recrop it back. I think the cropping works very well too here. I mean, you could have gone something like this. And I mean, that would be a great picture when you think about it. I would have gone maybe even... and it would be a long panoramic picture. What I would do, I would make one bigger in the middle and then print 2 smaller on the sides with those. And then I have them on the wall like 3 images. I think that would look great. Great. So composition, great. Contrast of the colors, light is a little bit strong, but great capture. The set of 3s works very well here. They are all in movement. There's a little bit of reflection. Brilliant. On this one, as a composition goes, I think you've done extremely well. We have the big foreground main subject here with the houses and everything at the back, really creating the story, as I told you earlier, of we have this nature then surrounded by human and the impact of the human. I think that is a really deep image and I love it. Post-processing, actually not much I would do here. If anything, I would jump into the highlights and bring them down just a little bit to make it a little bit more natural. We could do that in a curves as well, maybe extra exposure, and that's about it. You could, if you would want to, close it a little bit more from the bottom, just to kind of close it in overall, but it's completely up to you. So maybe something more like this and be done with it. So that's it. Now on this one, same thing. I'm sorry this week, Zdenek, I can't give you too much advice because I think it just works. One thing you could have done, I wonder how this looks. So this is just very artistic thing, so don't worry too much about it. What I would do, I would jump into the saturation on HSL and bring down all the colors except the orange. But then, how would we do this? So something like this, and then little masking with the minor saturation, adjust the size, and maybe do something like this. It would be interesting as well. I would definitely close the image from the top just to kind of do something like this, and maybe even from the bottom. and get something like this. It would be interesting. It's something a little bit different, so don't take it too seriously. But, you know, this is one way to do it, another way to do it. I think it's very interesting as well. Obviously, it looks like I have maybe removed the saturation from here, but you can easily fix that. And that's about it. Zdenek, thank you so much for sharing the images with us. It's always a pleasure to see them. Stay safe, take care, and send us more images for the next episode. Looking at the final photographer, we have Ken. Ken, 2 images from you with the eagle. Now, this one I absolutely love. Him kind of walking on this tree is looking brilliant. This one is a little bit soft for me, I have to say, Ken. I can't really give you much feedback on it. Even though I know it's an eagle and I know it's tricky to capture it, it's really pixelated. Let's have a look at the... Yeah, even though it's a large resolution, so means that it is moving, and yeah, there is some degree where I understand that it's such a subject, so it's kind of forgiving. I think on this one, I think it just didn't really work. Looking at the 1/200 of a second, probably not fast enough. Probably for flying bird, you're talking much faster than that. I mean, 1/2000 of a second rather than 1/200, and it's just really blurry. So let's have a look at this one. Now, Nikon Coolpix P1000, ISO 200, 306 millimeters, so really punched in. f6.3, 1/500 of a second. Now, 1/500 of a second, giving us already much better result. Lots of sharpness on him. One thing you wish, and I know you see the same way as I do, you wish these branches wouldn't be here. And actually, I don't think it would be that difficult to remove them in Photoshop. This could be really just simple content-aware removal. At least those 2, I think, should be really simple. So that's something I would try to do. Other than that, they are brilliant. The picture is really, really cool, and I love it. I love that the bird is walking away, so he's doing something. I think the framing is very good as well. The contrast of the colors is working excellent as well. The blur at the back just giving us nice depth, which works excellent as well. And in overall, it's just a very, very lovely picture of magnificent bird. In the post-processing, I would focus on removing these branches, which again, I think it would be possible to do. A little bit more contrast, maybe a little bit more brightness with a little bit extra vibrance, a little bit more contrast, and maybe a little bit more exposure. And then in effects, some minus vignette, and I would leave it there. So, Ken, I'm sorry I can't talk much about this one, but this one I love. Brilliant capture. I always love to see the captures of an eagle, and I'm impressed. Maybe you can tell me where you photographed them, how you managed to get access to them, because they are just epic. Thank you very much for joining us this week again. It's always a pleasure to see your images, and I hope to see more of them in the future. And same goes for all of you folks. If you want to join us for the next episode of our photography review show, all you need to do is to join our membership and the Clever Photographer Academy. Head to our website cleverphotographer.com and find out more about it there. Can't wait to see and review your images next week. Until next time, thank you very much for watching today. My name was Jakub, and I'll see you in the next video.